Hi, everybody. This is Chris Coffey from West40, and you're listening to Shift Everything, the podcast that challenges the status quo in education. Join us as we explore what's happening in the classroom and the changes that are making the impossible possible. Well, hi, everyone. This is Chris Coffey with West40. Today, I wanted to talk about the future of education and what that might look like, not just here in Illinois, but across the country and maybe across the world. And I wanted to talk to someone who has a lot of experience in education, someone who is a leader in education in Illinois, and someone who is my boss and would like to talk about this. His name is Dr. Mark Klaisner. Mark, you've been our guest several times before on Shift Everything. So first of all, how are you doing? Basically, it's been a good couple of months in Illinois, right? As far as education, as far as the legislation and funding. So are we on the right path right now?
First of all, thanks for having me back, Chris. I always enjoy these opportunities to chat with you about what's going on. In terms of Illinois, you're right. In general, I would say we are on the right path. And I would draw that line back to even November, December, January, when the State Board of Education put together their proposed budget. Then the governor proposed his budget. We've worked through the entire spring legislative session, and now we have a budget sitting on the governor's desk. And there are a lot of really good things that are included within the governor's the budget that the legislature took to the governor. I fully expect him to sign that very shortly. But some of the highlights that are near and dear to us, first of all, you and I have talked about the evidence-based funding model in the state of Illinois. And once again, the legislature and the State Board of Education have recommended $350 million new dollars into the system. And in its briefest form, the evidence-based funding model allows us to use research-based indicators to tell how far a particular district is away from adequately providing what our kids deserve. The further you are away from adequacy, the more money you get to close the gap. So as long as the legislature and the governor continue to invest in that evidence-based funding, that benefits every single public school student across the state of Illinois. And then additionally, there have been some pieces that were sort of laser focused, targeted, and those include primarily, the most noticeable is early childhood. And at this time, and really, you mentioned the whole world, all across the world, people are looking at how much of a difference we can make for our young kiddos, to really help them get on track right from the start, rather than trying to rectify some of those difficulties later and change trajectories that are already in place. So early childhood is important. The governor has also, he proposed, and the legislature has now requested an additional $45 million of funding to assist with the teacher shortage. Close to us in the regional offices of education here in Illinois, we increased the amount of money that's coming to our regional safe schools, which are alternative schools to support students. And that's 3 times what it was a year ago. So early childhood, some at-risk student programming, all students through EBF. I think all of those are great. And maybe for another time, Chris, but there are a number of new initiatives coming out of the legislature. Typically, we throw them into a bucket we would call mandates. So there's a lot of things to talk about, but many of those are focused on student safety. They're focused on trying to make sure that we're operating in an efficient way that keeps students and staff safe. So some of the new legislation that's come about in the rulemaking realm has also been beneficial.
With this added funding for schools in Illinois, you mentioned the Safe School funding. early childhood education funding? How soon before we see any outcomes?
I'm going to answer that two ways. We anticipate the governor will sign the budget any day now, and school funding, public school funding, starts. Our first payments are typically on August 10th. So we will see the impact very quickly, really within a month, that there will be new amounts afforded to us as early as the middle of August. The second thing about when you mention outcomes, um, I love that conversation. And maybe that's also another episode of Shift Everything. But um, the evidence based funding model provides money for districts to address areas where they're feeling a distance from what the best practice research tells us. So if they need more social work or if they need lower class sizes, there are all kinds of things that can be implemented through the evidence-based funding model, which allows districts to address their strategic goals. Some of those we would see very quickly. Now, the teacher shortage is a real challenge, and maybe we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But um, if we were able to hire additional teachers and lower class sizes, be able to add more course offerings to students, be able to be a little more flexible in our scheduling, all those would be immediate um, tangible benefits to our programs. And then I believe wholeheartedly that over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, we'll start to see it in other metrics like student achievement, reduced behavior incidents, perhaps higher levels of attendance, achievement, preparedness for either for high school or for college. I believe those are the kinds of outcomes that are going to come out of the research-based items that we're funding through EBF.
When you hear the phrase the future of education, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, whatever that time period may be, are we envisioning something like the Jetsons type classroom, the robotic type classroom? Are we just thinking about an evolution of what we're currently teaching our kids? Are we going to see a whole different way of teaching as we evolve?
Okay, Chris, I know that you just hit a nerve with me. Part of our work is that we spend a lot of time in public schools and in private schools. And unfortunately, there are many days where I'm visiting schools and I see schools that look exactly like the ones I attended hundreds of years ago. It's schools traditionally have been very slow moving in change. I do believe that although the Jetsons is a little bit out, but it's okay to shoot for those kinds of goals. I do believe we are at a time where we are thinking differently. I would like to say that our encounter with the COVID challenges pushed us forward. We in West 40 are very proud of a hugely successful initiative that we call our remote school. The West 40 remote school, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have even thought it was possible. And now we're knocking at the door of about 100 students who have significant challenges, either emotional or physical challenges, and can't attend regular school. We're able to recruit teachers from currently it's all over the United States, but could theoretically be from anywhere in the world to be able to support students who, for whatever reason, need to be schooled at home through a remote environment. That feels, Chris, like a little bit like Jetsons to me. At the same time, I'm hearing things about waivers and about flexibility. I'm hearing about things like standards-based education that's more focused on students mastering skills rather than just taking tests and moving on. So we're asking a lot of really good questions about time, about space, about creativity, really looking outside of the traditional walls. So you mentioned things like robotics. We've been partnering with the Illinois Learning Technology Centers, and a couple of their things are around robotics or AI or different adventures like that. Well, as I mentioned, AI, that's a very Jetson thing, which is right in our laps. And I'm embracing this debate because some people are saying, "Oh no, 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 no! If kids can use AI to do their homework, they're really cheating." Well, my position, I'm only speaking for Mark, is AI is coming. We heard similar language about the internet, and now it's part of every classroom. And the majority of schools in our area have one-to-one devices. We need to empower kids with these new tools and help them to make good use, good decisions, look forward, not look in a limiting way. We'll always, 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 we will put the safety of students first. But beyond safety, let's give them the best tools we can. And quite frankly, a lot of us adults are going to have to learn right alongside. But let's embrace those innovative opportunities and find ways to maximize learning success and fulfillment for our students.
If you can plan a birthday party, you can plan to protect yourself and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local alerts, prepare an emergency kit, and make a family communications plan. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council. Mark, could you also envision, because our attention span in general is getting shorter, um,
Agreed.
due to our short attention span theater, do you think that will result one day in different types of classes or learning, like chunks of learning, shorter, bite-sized type classes, so you can squeeze in more of that type of stuff in a traditional school day?
So I'm going to sort of morph your suggestion, Chris, because I think you're right on target. But what I would add is I would like longer chunks of time with more in-depth types of projects. So if I'm asking a student to work in a problem-based learning kind of situation, maybe class is 2 hours long, but within that class, they're doing some math, they're doing some science, they're doing some language arts. They're pulling all the pieces together, making them cohesive. I think that our bell structures oftentimes fracture the ability to go deep into our learning. And so I would like less bells and more integrated, more cohesive learning environments where students are working with a number of different teachers. You could have a math teacher, a PE teacher, a biology teacher, all in the same room, helping students guide their work and exploration and their problem solving, or even their research in smaller chunks, as you alluded to, that then come together as a whole picture and help kids do a better job of understanding kind of the conglomerate rather than fractured pieces. I think that's where we need to head.
Mark, you've traveled to different parts of the world. You've seen other ways of education in other countries. What can you tell us about your experiences doing that? What have they learned from you, and what have you learned from them?
I love this question. I think our next generation, my own children, grandchildren, I like to say the world's shrinking, and our children need to have a better understanding of what's happening all over the world. It feels to me, in the places I visited, the thing that they ask me most about are the soft skills, the social emotional learning, the idea of problem solving and meshing and blending. How do students work collaboratively? How do they work collectively? How do they share ideas and communicate those with others? There are places around the world that I've been in contact with or that I've been able to visit where they're very good at isolated skills. So if you were to sit down and do a math test or a science content test, it could be that students from different places of the world are wrestling with or struggling with the soft skills, but are excelling at the metrics that are typically used. So when people say, how do our test scores relate to theirs? That's always a very interesting conversation. But at the same time, people around the world are saying, We want educators from the United States to come and help us connect the dots in between. How do we help develop students into becoming really productive students or collaborative problem solvers or be able to work as a team in reaching goals? I think that's the future. I think it starts in preschool. To our earlier conversation, it starts with playing in a sandbox. And oftentimes we as adults even use that analogy. But I think that's where the strength is. I had a chance to spend some time in the Middle East, and one of the countries that I visited, they actually brought universities from around the world. They call it Education City, and they established university settings from the United States, from England, from the Far East, and actually have a city of about 12 mini universities, bringing the best of the best from around the world and bringing it to their country so that they can share the best pedagogy, the best curricula, the best design for instruction and learning. I think that's a model for the rest of the world in how we can learn from each other and benefit from each other. Some areas are known for having incredible strengths. We often talk about Sweden and Finland, or we talk about Singapore. There are places around the world that just excel in academic achievement, but places that, like in the United States, we are often sought after for these ideas of collaborative problem solving, think tanking, going outside of the box and thinking differently about how to apply our skills. And I think if we're incorporating things like robotics, like AI, I don't know if you saw the other day, there was a wonderful story about how the United Nations is now working with AI robotics to talk about how can an AI robot be engaged in diplomacy because it takes out the emotion and works from a problem solving model. I don't think that's an answer, but I certainly think it's an interesting tool that could foster conversations about us getting along on a worldwide scope.
And Mark, to wrap it up, for any of these changes to actually happen, there needs to be a spark, right? Someone needs to say, all right, let's do this. And the rest is history.
I totally agree. And I think you know about me. That's probably why we named our podcast Shift Everything. That somebody's got to come along and say, let's not ever settle. There's always got to be something better. And it's exactly the reason that I have tried to travel and visit and learn and soak in and share when asked about ideas. Just the last couple days, I've been downstate at some meetings, meeting with colleagues, and we have several people that want to come visit programs in West 40 and talk about some things we're doing. We can't wait to learn from them. Next week, I have a team that's going out to another part of the state to visit with them and share things that have been successful. And frankly, some things that weren't successful, like don't make this mistake, we learned. But any way that we can be leaders as educators, we need to be open to learning, open to sharing, and always asking what's best for kids. You've heard me say our mission statement, our belief statement starts every child deserves, and they deserve the best that we can offer. We can only make it sharper by sharing our knowledge, sharing our ideas, coming together, working collaboratively with kids always at the center of the focus. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about this, especially in the notion of shift everything.
Well, Executive Director of West 40, Dr. Mark Klaisner, thank you so much, sir, for joining us on this conversation about the future of education. Very fun, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Shift Everything. We want to hear your thoughts and bold ideas and share your educational accomplishments. To join the conversation, email us at shifteverything@west40.org.